There are still a lot of questions as to who will be participating in Thursday's debates.
Donald Trump, Nikki Haley, and Ron DeSantis have all qualified for the debate. Now, Trump has opted to not take part in any previous debates, so now the question is whether it will only be Haley and DeSantis taking the stage.
Joining us again this morning is Nathan Schrader, an associate professor of political science and the co-director of the Center for Civic Engagement at New England College. Thanks for waking up with us, first of all. I appreciate it.
Of course.
How important is Thursday night, this debate, for these candidates looking to stand out?
Well, I think it's extremely important, but maybe not for all the reasons that everybody's been anticipating. You have Haley and DeSantis coming out of Iowa running almost in a dead heat for that second place spot, right? They both have everything on the line here. But the thing is, Donald Trump, I was waiting to see if Donald Trump finished under 50% in Iowa, or Nikki Haley or DeSantis got much closer to him than they did yesterday. I think there would have been more pressure on him to debate. Right now, though, the Trump campaign doesn't have a lot of incentive to get into the debate arena right now. I'm not saying I believe he should debate. It's better for democracy, for the front runner to, of course, debate, for everyone to debate. But right now, he was able to breeze through Iowa last night without a lot of problems. If he comes into New Hampshire, it may not really benefit him to get on that debate stage. But I think if he would have finished, if it would have been a close race in Iowa, his incentive would have been stronger to get on that stage.
That's right. And we were saying that last night, he was talking that it's really over. We're in the general election right now. That was what he was talking about.
That is the message I think you're going to hear from Donald Trump, because he's got, 3 rallies over the course of the next 4 days or something in New Hampshire. I expect him to hit hard on that message. He may, in fact, ignore his Republican opponents and just focus really on Joe Biden's record, and kind of already frame this as, we're moving on from the primaries. You just have to get out there and help me finish this off. But let's look at Biden. And I think you're also seeing Joe Biden do this, right? He's been taking aim at Donald Trump for months. So both of those candidates have already kind of made a decision, I believe, strategically, to make this a general election campaign, even though we're months and months even from the conventions.
How strong a finish do you think DeSantis has to have, or Haley has to have, in the New Hampshire primary to keep this momentum going?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure there's momentum. I'm not convinced that they have momentum after yesterday. I think one of them has to win. If one of them doesn't win, I think this race, as they say, is all over but the crying. I think that Trump showed last night he has the momentum. The challengers finished so far behind that I don't see momentum on their side unless they can pull off, one of them can pull off a big surprise win in New Hampshire.
All right. Nathan, thank you so much for coming in.
You're welcome.
We really appreciate it. Thank you.